Have you ever wondered if the tiredness you feel is ADHD mental fatigue or resistance to starting? Same. I think one of the trickiest parts of living with an ADHD brain that nobody ever talks about is knowing when to push through and when to rest. And in episode 327 of the I'm Busy Being Awesome podcast, we are exploring a simple yet powerful way to help us check in and know the difference for ourselves today. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the podcast. As I mentioned in today's intro, we're exploring a topic that I know all too well. It's something I explore with my clients all the time. It's something I grapple with personally. And it is this distinction between mental fatigue and resistance. So we're going to talk about a simple way to help us tell the difference. And in fact, this episode is going to be short and sweet because I'm modeling the very strategy we're talking about. So for me, this week, it's not about resistance, it's about fatigue. And knowing that allows me to show up in a way that actually honors my capacity by creating a shorter episode that I hope will still be incredibly useful for you today too. Now, one of the most impactful yet often overlooked aspects of working with an ADHD brain, as I mentioned, is understanding our energy and our capacity. Nobody talks about this enough. We just don't have that steady stream of executive functioning every single day. It's not something we can always count on. Instead, our energy levels rise and fall, sometimes pretty dramatically. There are days when our executive functions are firing on all cylinders and we can get an incredible amount of work done. We're like, what? How did that all happen in one day? And then there are other days where those functions just skip work entirely and don't give us any forewarning, any heads up. It's very rude. Now, as I've talked about on many episodes, and most specifically episode 287 of the podcast, I'll link to it in the show notes, many of us ADHD brains tend to run like thoroughbreds rather than workhorses. And what I mean by this, I believe I mentioned it last week too, what I mean by this is when we have the energy and the focus, our brains can hone in, zoom in, and run hard. We can accomplish a lot, get a ton of work done in that relatively short period of time. And please hear me, I don't think this is a bad thing. In fact, I think it's amazing. It's how many of our brains operate. But there's also a catch. Just like a thoroughbred running a hard race, we also need to rest on the other side of our sprint. And where the things get tricky is that so often many of us don't allow ourselves that recovery time. Instead of resting and recharging after our big push, we instead try to keep running. And that's when we go into burnout. So when we talk about this concept of energy awareness, it's all about noticing how much fuel do I have in the tank right now? Have I just run a race? Do I have the reserves to push through resistance, get into flow? Do I have that in me, or do I need a rest? And this brings us to what I think about as a push-pull dilemma. Because here's the thing. As ADHD brains, we often have to get brutally honest with ourselves about what's going on, because sometimes what we are experiencing is this resistance. The toddler brain, it's throwing a bit of a tantrum. It doesn't want to get started. It doesn't want to do the boring thing. It's kind of digging in its heels. And in those cases, often the most supportive thing we can do is to choose to lean in, to embrace that discomfort, to trust that once we start, we will get into flow. And in fact, I was just saying this to a client the other day. We need to choose our difficult because it's going to be difficult either way. We can either be uncomfortable on the front side of the work and lean in and do the hard thing and then feel that sense of accomplishment on the other side, or we can skip the thing in the moment and instead feel that relief in the moment and then face potentially frustration or overwhelm thinking about the unfinished stuff later. Now, what I want to drive home here is I don't think one is better than the other. I actually think both choices make sense depending on the situation. And in fact, that is what makes this decision so tricky. Because on the other side of the coin, it's not resistance. It's not the toddler brain throwing a tantrum, not wanting to lean in. It is genuine exhaustion. It is mental fatigue. And yet, because so many of us have learned to survive in this world that is not designed for ADHD brains, our default response is, well, I probably am just procrastinating. I probably just need to push harder. I probably just need to do a little more. I'm sure it's me. And this is where that push-pull dilemma shows up so strongly. Do I start this project even though I'm feeling this resistance? Is it just resistance to the discomfort of starting something unfamiliar or tedious? Or do I need to honor my exhaustion and rest here? Does my system actually need a restorative break because I've been running hard? Do I keep working late into the evening because I think I should, quote unquote, just push through? Or do I trust that stopping now and leaving myself some breadcrumbs for tomorrow might be the better choice? This is that push-pull. It's where so many of us get stuck. Because again, both options can seem very helpful and very accurate at the same time. And it can be incredibly challenging to know which is which in the moment. Now, before we go any further, I need to ask you, have you taken my free quiz? It's called What's Your Overwhelm Type? And I designed it specifically for our ADHD brains. In just 7 simple questions, less than a minute, you will discover the unique way that overwhelm presents for your brain, the obstacles that pattern creates, and powerful steps to help you shift from overwhelm into action today. You can head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/quiz or tap through the link in the caption or the show notes and go take it now to get your personalized results. All right, so as I mentioned, knowing which is which, when to lean in and do the hard thing, when to lean back and take a rest, it's hard to know which one to choose. And of course, the challenging part is there's no universal rule book either for when to push and when to rest. What's quote unquote right is going to depend not only on the person, but also the situation, the task at hand, even the season of life you're living. And sometimes that answer can shift from one day to the next, one portion of the day to the next. One day, leaning in, doing the hard thing, feeling that initial discomfort to get to the other side, that might be exactly what you need to get into flow and make the progress you want. On another day, pushing through might tip you into burnout because your system is already depleted. So that same strategy, it won't always apply, even though we're the same person. And that's why learning to check in with yourself and where you're at regularly is so important. It's so important to ask yourself questions like, well, how long have I been running this current mental race? Have I had time to recharge recently? Am I noticing signs of mental fog, of irritability, of mistakes creeping in? Or is this more of a resistance that will likely fade once I get into motion, start moving? As always, the goal is not perfection here. It's not about always making the quote unquote right call. It's about building awareness and honesty with yourself so that you can make those choices that support both your present self and your future self, which I genuinely believe is a skill that gets easier the more you practice it. So how do we do that? How do we practice recognizing this distinction? This is where I like to bring in one simple, powerful tool. It is one guiding question that, again, I love to ask myself and my clients whenever this push-pull comes up. Whenever we're facing this dilemma, I love to pause and ask, which option is the kind option? Which option is an act of kindness to myself? Or if I'm asking my client, which choice is an act of kindness to you? This question helps cut through the chatter, the noise of guilt, obligation, habit. It shifts the focus from all the shoulds to genuine self-support. Because sometimes kindness does look like leaning in, reminding yourself, I can do hard things, moving through that resistance by regulating your emotions so you can move through to the other side. This is the choice of doing the hard thing. Other times, kindness looks like permission to stop, to rest, and to give your brain and your body the recharge that they need. Again, there's no wrong answer here. The key is to slow down long enough to really sit with that question and listen to your body, listen to your brain, listen to your nervous system. Which option is the kind option? Which option feels like love? Which choice will support both your present and future self? That is the one to go with. Now this week, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, I am frankly modeling this strategy in real time because as I record this episode, I'm tired. I have been running a long thoroughbred race, moving through a very busy stretch. And at this point, I'm ready for the rest. And by the time this episode comes out, I'll have wrapped up this sprint quite a while ago. But right now, I am in real time feeling it. And it makes sense. In fact, I knew I'd be running a long race. I signed up for it knowing I have my Q3 retreat coming up at the end of the week, which is going to give me that space to recharge. But in this exact moment, when I sat down to create this episode on Monday, on podcast day, I felt this push-pull dilemma in full force. Part of me wanted to lean in, push through. This is what we do on podcast day. Outline the long, detailed episode, do some more research, deliver this huge episode with this idea I've been thinking about. And then there was the other part of me that knew I was stretched thin, and the kind choice for both my present and future self was to keep things short and simple. And that's exactly what I'm doing in this episode. Instead of pushing myself past my capacity, going down that rabbit hole, I'm modeling the guiding question in action because I asked myself, which option is the kind option? And today, the answer is to record a shorter, simpler episode that both shares where I'm at and hopefully gives you a simple way to do the same. By choosing the kind option, I'm honoring the energy I have without making myself push harder while still being able to show up and be here with you. And I hope by learning this one simple question, you're able to do the same in an area of your life where you might be feeling stretched thin, especially knowing that this episode is coming out toward the end of October, right before the full holiday season kicks in. So what is the kind choice? Here's my invitation for you this week. The next time you find yourself in that push-pull, pause, take a breath, ask yourself, which option is the kind choice for me right now? And sit with yourself as you find that answer. And once you do, go all in on that decision. If kindness looks like leaning in and doing the hard thing, put in those supports, reduce the friction, and feel so proud of yourself for moving through the difficult friction as you shift into the work you know you want to do. And if kindness looks like rest, honor that fully. Give yourself permission to step back, to recharge, to tend to your needs, and then you can come back renewed with greater strength and clarity. Because here's the truth, when you choose with kindness, you're supporting not only your current self, but also your future self. You're showing your brain that you can be trusted to listen and honor what it needs, and to stick to that decision. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I would love to hear in the comments, what kind choice are you making today? Let's choose that and see what shifts for you. All right, my friends, that's going to do it for us this week. And if you are ready to take these concepts and apply them to your life, if you're ready to learn how to support your ADHD in a way that works best for you, I invite you to check out today's show notes where you can learn more about how we can work together, both in my small group coaching program, We're Busy Being Awesome, and in one-on-one coaching. Also, if you're ready to find the unique way Overwhelm presents for your ADHD brain, the obstacles that pattern creates, and powerful steps to shift from overwhelm into action, be sure to take my free quiz and discover your overwhelm type today. Tap through the link in the show notes or head to I'mBusyBeingAwesome.com/quiz. Until next time, keep being awesome. I'll talk with you soon.